I wanted to say thank you for joining the Manufacturers Council Happy Hour series today. And I hope you are settled in with your favorite happy hour beverage and snacks. And because I'm from Redlands, I've got the Hangar 24 Orange Wheat, my favorite, and I'm sort of a just sissy beer drinker. It's delicious. On April, our event will be Thursday, April 15th. Please join us for a panel discussion on apprenticeships, filling specialty training needs, and building company loyalty. Rick Pettit would probably like to hear that one. For upcoming events, please watch the events page at our website, mfgcouncilie.com, and do email me if you have any suggestions on topics that you would like to hear about. And I want to say a special thank you to those manufacturers who participated in our survey in February. The results were a great help as we move forward for planning our programming this year. And today we are recording this program. The video will be available on Monday afternoon at our website under About and then under Videos. So that will allow you to share this with others in your company who couldn't make it today, or if you'd like to review it in the future. The Manufacturers Council is a member of the California's Manufacturing Network, and we especially want to thank CMTC for their partnership and support. And we would also like to thank our P&B CPAs in Riverside who've helped us so much with those special things that we don't enjoy doing, like tax returns. And I want to tell you that they have a specialty in manufacturing. They're absolutely great. So as we go into the program, please remember to keep your mics muted. We will have a Q&A session after each segment, and we usually end our meetings at about 5 o'clock. But if the conversation is still rolling, we'll keep the meeting rolling for those of you that wish to continue to participate. Additional support comes today from the California Manufacturing and Technology Association, CMTA. Since 1918, the CMTA has worked with state government to develop balanced laws, effective regulations, sound public policies to stimulate economic growth and create jobs. And CMTA represents businesses from the entire California manufacturing community, and we encourage you to support them through membership. As a reminder, the MCIE does not endorse any legislative actions. Our organization is educational, and we bring these presentations to you as information you can choose to act upon. So our first speaker today is Lawrence Gaden. Lawrence is a policy director for CMTA, where he researches, creates, and guides foundation for CMTA's Making California the legislative agenda. Lawrence focuses on policies that incentivize long-term investment and production, and he leads legislative efforts for the association's broad spectrum of policy areas impacting its over 400 members. Thank you for joining us, Lawrence, and welcome.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. And I have a couple of slides for you. I've sent those over to Vincent whenever you're ready. Lawrence Gaden, Policy Director here with CMTA. Just a little background on myself. I've been with CMTA for a little over a year. I started in December of 2019. Got a very, very brief introduction to lobbying, and then had to quickly adjust to the remote life and kind of go from there. But I think in learning, really how to do this thing remote, I've actually been able to learn, really kind of take the time and kind of dive into some of the actual manufacturing issues. I came from a different industry, so be able to kind of see and really feel and hear about some of the issues directly from members really helped me in this time. And I'm always glad to talk to manufacturers directly and kind of hear from you guys and hear your voices. So thank you for having me. I'm going to the next slide. It's a quick state of manufacturing. You guys know where we kind of stand. We have over 30,000 manufacturing companies. California manufacturing employ over 1.3 million people. One of the things on here that I'm really, really proud of is our multiplier effect. For every manufacturing job, we create 2.5 jobs. And I think that's what really stands out for me is, in trying to nail down this production within our state. We touch so much through our supply chains that, we're really punching above our weight class in manufacturing. You see, the percentage of our total output. And one thing I'll tease this a little bit, small manufacturing is big. Amongst our CMTA, we have over 400 manufacturing members. I believe over about 75% of our small manufacturers. And I think we're really proud of that group. Like I said, they're punching above their weight class, despite some of the challenges we face in our state. And, I'm really, really proud of our small manufacturers. Going on to the next slide. Manufacturing job growth. I put this slide in there for something I keep going to tease throughout this presentation. But as you see, we're really lacking behind the rest of the country in manufacturing job growth, despite our performance. And, a lot of that is due to some of the regulatory climate, just really kind of disincentivizing manufacturing growth within the state, despite our performance, and really kind of in turn disincentivizing production. I mean, you've seen, we all saw this past year, how difficult it was to get, essential items, and even down to toilet paper, some things that we all will need. If we can't produce it and produce it efficiently within our own state borders, we're going to have a problem. We're definitely falling a little bit behind in comparison to the rest of the country. That's something we definitely are mindful of in developing our policy. And Prop 65, the big issue at hand. I'm going to speak a little bit about this one. We've been working really hard with this issue for the past couple of months, and been really trying to get informed and hear from you guys really what some of the specific concerns are. But we've been working with some other members and hearing from various stakeholders and really trying to get out, some good feedback as to what we've seen. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So California's proposed some amendments to Prop 65 regulations, which would change some labeling requirements for consumer products. These changes are really, really considered disruptive, could be really problematic for our supply chain, and really, kind of slowing down the distribution of goods going forward. When OEHA, I usually like to say the initial, but when they made those revisions to the warning requirements that were issued in 2016, became full in effect in 2018, they included a short form warning option as really an acceptable alternative to these revised requirements for consumer product exposure warnings. I know many of you guys use this option. It has some advantages, including the shorter language that can fit on a product's label or packaging. It makes it easier for a company to show compliance without identifying all the triggers for that Prop 65 warning, which would be a requirement for consumer product exposure warnings under these revised regulations. And over time, we've seen OEHA express concerns regarding the reliance on short form warnings when label and packaging space is not an issue, despite the fact that such use is compliant with the regulations they already set in place, the guidance they set in place. And to really maintain safety and economic performance, the state, the Office of Environmental Health and Hazard Assessment, OHA, should withdraw the misguided proposals. We think that we have some substantial concerns going forward with those. We really think the proposed rulemaking seeks to upend the Article 6 warning requirements that just went into effect 2 years ago. We were engaged in a multi-year regulatory process that culminated in the repeal and replacement of Article 6 and created the short form and long form warnings. And I think really that process of repealing and replacing that Article 6 warning was really some of the most substantial work we've done in Prop 6 in over a decade. The plain language of the amendments and the direct statements from the OEI assured the business community we'd have some kind of certainty and confidence in the new warning requirements, but and business in turn really invested a lot of time and capital to really kind of overhaul their Prop 65 warning programs and really bring them into new compliance. But with the new rulemaking, really seeks to upend that, and the Article 6 warning requirements, like I said, just went into effect. So what they're proposing now, like I said, trashes that process and would really require something that every single business utilizing short form warnings to really end up redoing their programs. And they're disguising and weighting that financial impact of the rulemaking by framing as clarifying and really trying to identify or say they find no financial impacts to businesses, which we vehemently disagree with. I think you can move on to the next slide too as well, Vincent. We're part of some both statewide and national efforts to reject these patchwork regulations. We've been working really hard with the National Association of Manufacturers as well as the Cal Chamber going forward with some efforts. I really think so. One of the changes, I'll kind of spell all out for you right now. One of the proposed changes is the short form warning, only be used if the total surface area of the product label for consumer information is 5 square inches or less. And they don't actually really explain why that 5 inch or less requirement is there. They don't really go beyond it. And there's also some kind of problematic and really kind of contradictory framework within that 5 inches, that requirement they came up with. And it really kind of goes beyond just the imposition of a new arbitrary size limitation. It requires considerable change to the content of the warning label itself under section 25603. And also if a business even plans on selling a small product that meets that 5 inch requirement, the proposed changes to the regulation would still force a complete overhaul to the program. Also with some other the content included in the requirement includes a more expanded cancer risk form for the chemicals. The changes would also really infuse some more, like I said, it's uncertainty and liability for business to comply. Businesses are pretty frustrated, and we want to hear from you guys. I think you guys are pretty frustrated. Like I said, we went through that 3-year process, and only to have it come back is really an issue. And going to the next slide, I can dive into a little bit more. Just the 3 biggest impacts, the unnecessary appeal. Like I said, we worked really hard on working to agree to these regulations only about 3 years ago, and to have them kind of come back and really not have a full basis to why, or kind of a scoping and planning as to why it's something that's really a problem. Another big problem is frivolous litigation. We're really anticipating that it's a really litigious issue. It's going to exacerbate the already kind of abusive litigation climate we've seen by really giving private enforcers more opportunities to file unscrupulous lawsuits against really small businesses small 10 employees, which can really hurt, especially in these times. Like I said, those same small businesses are kind of struggling to stay afloat under closures, under all this COVID-19 requirements. And their limited time and resources should be preserved for dealing with that and dealing with compliance and safety protocols, not trying to avoid a gotcha lawsuit, which we were kind of seeing these kind of playing out as. Companies are continuing to see an uptick of private enforcement action against them. To kind of give a scale of it, from 2010 to 2020, the total number of 60-day notices issued by private enforcers increased by more than 346%. And during that same time period, businesses have settled more than 185 million in Prop 65 lawsuits. Many of these 60-day notices were issued by new plaintiffs, new firms that were engaged in practices that they claim to be of the public interest, but really kind of they're driven by the pursuit of profit. And we're really trying to avoid that going forward. We think that will be a huge issue. The surge in those lawsuits really kind of place a huge pressure on manufacturers to rethink that Prop 65 compliance. And changing the length of the warning will not address the systemic issues or systemic reasons for why the warnings have to occur in the marketplace. Will really cause more confusion and really impose more cost to businesses going forward. The third step, I think, is just the economic impact, and that's something that we really are trying to get addressed. I think it will have a significant economic impact on small manufacturers, like I said, small as up to 10 employees. OEHI is really incorrect to claim, and quote, the action does not impose any new requirements or on private persons or businesses. It's just false. All businesses really currently use short form warnings will be compelled to substantially change those and to comply. By their own acknowledgement, the number of businesses utilizing short forms is substantial, and it justifies the proposed rulemaking in order to curb unnecessary warnings utilized by many businesses. OEHI was required to conduct a SRIA, that's the Standardized Regulatory Impact Assessment, that estimates the fiscal impacts. It really upending that, within that kind of, or excuse me, for that SRIA to get an economic impact over 50 million, that triggers, I believe, another investigation by GoBiz, and we're working on a letter for that. And I believe we're easily going to clear that 50 million that go out. It's going to have a huge impact. We're working with the Cal Chamber. I just actually got an email that earlier today. Wasn't able to include it in my slides, but so like I said, in that short form warning requirements, really going to have a small effect on small and medium manufacturers, somebody we're really trying to look out for throughout the course this year. And I'm teasing some legislation. I'm going to tease it again with our looking out for small manufacturers. You know, manufacturers struggling to keep their doors open and struggling to keep folks safe and to really comply with, you know, the myriad of COVID-19 emerging regulations and to stay afloat amid those, and to propose to do serious harm to the business community, which is what OEI is doing with these kind of ill-conceived, really ill-timed Article 6 winter requirement changes. It's going to be bad. And that collective cost, like I said, if we could find, you know, a fact cost of more than 50 million that it would cost in order to stay compliant with these new packaging disclosures, we could trigger a major regulation review. And I think that would be, that's the term exactly. And I think that would be really, really important going forward. But we're continuing to work. The comment period is closed. So we'll be going forward, and we're probably anticipating another comment period. So it'll be, we're anticipating some more feedback, but they have not, you know, said anything going forward. So we'll be waiting on some new provisions to kind of see what's going forward. We're ready for the next slide as well, I think. And also, yeah, so ETS, I was getting a little mixed up, and sorry about that. The most recent comment period for ETS has actually ended, and Cal OSHA staff is reviewing some feedback. So really the aim for the standards that we have is really try to, you know, achieve the right balance between worker protections and operational integrity. The pandemic has really, you know, issued a unprecedented response by government entities to try to mitigate the spread of the virus. But, you know, the web of inconsistent actions that we've seen to kind of accurately reflect the rapid evolution of this virus and kind of what we're going through in the crisis kind of complicates the intentions of what they're trying to do with compliance. We're urging the staff to find the best methods to avoid overburdening manufacturers with some really kind of entity-specific requirements that challenge understanding and compliance without really improving some of the health results. We anticipate another additional comment period. They have not submitted any kind of feedback yet from the initial discussion draft we have. We're going to get one within the next month or so. And they'll have to have that go in front of the OSHA board. So we'll see with that one going forward. But yeah, really trying to aim. I mean, they had some kind of really, really strong language in that as well. So we'll see with some updates on that one. I can't speak into as much liberty as I can about the ETS. As you guys know, I'm replacing Nicole Rice. She moved on from CMTA, and in playing catch up, you know, she had a whole lot of experience built up with this, but definitely catching up. And like I said, if anybody has any questions going forward, and we're still hearing a lot of feedback, Molly, you can circulate my email, and I'll be free, or be more than happy to help anybody or answer any questions you guys have going forward on that one. I'm still kind of catching up on that one as well myself. So not at liberty to kind of go in full detail on that one, but we're definitely still working hard with that. So, and then we can move on. I think we have some legislation coming up next. Yeah, so on the advocacy side, CMTA and the California manufacturers really work hard to bring investments that you know, build strong communities and make jobs possible in every other sector. Like I said, we really are proud of that multiplier effect. And we're really aiming to protect the industry and make California a place of opportunity, not just a place that, you know, manufacturers want to leave. And annually, we release our Making California legislative agenda. Those are our make or breakers bills that we identify as either going to really help the manufacturing industry or could really hamper it going forward. Go ahead and go on to the next slide. So our Making California legislative agenda this year, we have 4 makers so far. It's really early in the legislative session, so these lists are going to be dynamic. But so far, we have 4 makers, which I'm really happy for. We don't always want to kind of go out there just saying no to stuff. We want to push some stuff. And one thing we're really, really excited about is AB 904. That's a bill we have with Assemblymember Grayson, and that is actually a sponsored bill. That's a bill we're really, really pushing. Our top maker, it's the California Innovation and Production Credit. So what that is actually, I don't know if you guys are too familiar with the old MIC, the Manufacturing Investment Credit, that ran from about, I believe, 93 to 2004. So we took that credit, remixed it a little bit, added some new elements, and really tried to gear it and tailor it to help small manufacturers, small and medium-sized manufacturers. It's the credit is actually scaled. It's a tax credit based on capital expenditures put on into any manufacturing facility or any manufacturing operations. and it's actually scaled a little bit to favor small and mid-sized manufacturers, a 1% credit increase. So we're really trying to kind of boost and bolster and really infuse some economic activity, especially on the production end. Like I said, we all seen, with the COVID-19 pandemic, how, important production is and how kind of much we lag behind it in the state. And I think to really encourage that and establish a mechanism to encourage that is a top priority for us. So that's a bill we're really pushing. We've already garnered some support from some legislators, and we look forward to really going as far as we can with that one. It's a myriad of tax credit bills out right now, so we're swimming in a big pool, but we really want to try to get some funds secured for manufacturing going forward and really establish a push for growth. Not just beyond COVID as well, not just out the COVID experience. SB 74, that's a Borges bill, the Keeping California Working Act. So actually that bill, it may remove from the list pretty soon, but not, for anything bad. That bill actually achieved its really intended goal through the governor executive order. He signed a bill, SB 87, that secured another $2.1 billion for small businesses, and that reached the $2.6 billion goal within the Senator Borges bill. So they're still going forward with that bill. It's still going through the legislative process. I'm pretty sure if I had to guess, I've been going back and forth with the office. They're being, a little timid, but I think they're going to probably end up pulling that one because they got what they wanted. I think the governor kind of wants a little bit of pressure off his back. He got a lot. 70 legislators ended up supporting that bill. It was a really successful Senator Borges, and we're happy that it was able to secure some more funds for small businesses. We have two more, AB 839, an O'Donnell bill, a CTE bill, something we're really excited about. Another one, AB 1036, a bill that came out last year as well. They're repeating it, Eduardo Garcia bill, a Manufacturing Emergency Preparedness Act, working to establish some more funds for manufacturers, something that we're definitely in support of. Excuse me. You can go on to the next slide, Vincent. Thank you. And then some breakers. This list is only 3 right now. It's definitely going to grow. I can guarantee you that. But these are definitely some of the three main bills that we're definitely kind of focused on. SB 260, Climate Corporate Accountability Act. That's a first of its kind measure in the country that would direct CARB to develop some requirements for corporations doing business in California with more than $1 billion in gross annual revenue. And that's, not just gross annual revenue made in California, but anywhere. And if you're doing business, it requires them to disclose their scope 1, 2, and 3 greenhouse gas emissions in annual reports and implement reduction goals. And it's really in line with what we've seen with state and federal goals to combat climate change. But it's really an aggressive step forward. The measures in those requirements, or the requirements in that measure would not only exceed states, but federal requirements from the SEC as well. We've heard a lot of concerns. The scope 2 and 3 emissions, that's it's really kind of concerning. With forced company disclose that for the first time. Scope 2 is the indirect emissions from electricity purchased and consumed, and scope 3 is the indirect emissions to be associated with supply chain, water usage, even business travel for your employees. So that's the scope 3 is definitely a problem. The bill also has a really vague definition of a science-based emissions target and has the potential to really try to govern, emissions anywhere outside or anywhere a covered entity operates, even outside of California, which just has some really kind of problematic elements to it. It also requires a third party to audit the results and findings. So it's really going to end up being pretty costly. And like I said, it really kind of falls in line with the federal push we've seen with this new administration and going forward. So we anticipate that being a big fight for us, but we're going to be working hard on that one. Another one, AB 71, the Rivas bill, where we move forward to that one as a breaker. Going to result in a tax of $2.4 billion and a cost to California businesses. We've joined some coalition letters. We have our letters in as well. We're just waiting for that bill to get set in the committee and get going with the fight on that one. And SB 410 relating to the some of those OSHA and ETS regulations. We're still waiting for that one to get set, pushing through that one as well. I'm still catching up on that one. Like I said, I have some big footsteps to follow in with Nicole, but it's something we're definitely gonna be ready to fight for. And like I said, this list will definitely grow. There's a lot of spot bills in the legislature right now, so things are definitely subject to change. But I can definitely anticipate, like I said, SB 260 and AB 71 are definitely two of our major fights on the legislative side, and something we'll be going forward with on our agenda to protect manufacturers going forward. And I believe that might be it. If I have one more slide, you can go ahead and advance to it. But yeah, that is it. If I have any questions for you guys, I appreciate you guys taking the time out to listen after a long week for you guys. Like I said, we're working hard to fight for you guys on the advocacy side and beyond. So if there's any questions, feel free.
Just be sure to unmute yourself if you have a question.
Yeah, I have a question. Who does the policing of that new warning labels, Prop 65? Is that OSHA?
Yes,
Oh, they got their hands full, don't they?
sure do.
Yeah. Yeah, and just one more thing. If you didn't know, this was the anniversary of toilet paper running out a year ago. Thought I'd mention that since you had already mentioned it, Lawrence.
Yeah, trust me, I know. And unfortunately, you go to some places and there still may not be toilet paper.
Yeah, that's true. Bring your own. Can you spare a square? Okay, and then the other one was, oh, I guess I didn't write it down. That's it for me. I had another question, but it flew out of my mind. Thank you, Lawrence.
No worries.
Any other questions? Lawrence, I wondered if you could elaborate just a little bit on AB 71, Bring California Home, and why the huge monetary impact.
It's a homelessness tax bill. They're basically working. I mean, it goes through a lot of mechanisms, but it's basically going to implement a huge tax that they're going to pass it along to businesses, and really actually kind of disproportionately impact small businesses in kind of the way it's mechanized out. And yeah, they're basically kind of funding some homelessness projects and the like, and that will kind of trickle down into business greatly. And I think our number, like I said, our number was estimated about 2.4 billion as the cost on businesses. I believe we got that from the chamber, I believe. So yeah, it's going to be a really costly.
Yeah. Going back to the 65, it's been around since 1986. I was just curious, you had a few thumbnails about litigation and other things, which wouldn't that have already been happening, or because of this revision, is it just out of curiosity, what is it that these warning labels don't include, or that they're going to do more policing of? How are they going to do that?
I think the biggest concern is like the sizing, the packaging, and I'm not at full liberty to express, but I think, the sizing of the packaging was really the concern. Like that 5 inches is, depending on what you're packaging, could be pretty costly, and going forward with that as well.
Kind of end product use items, if you will.
Yeah, and also it actually extends the trigger of some of the chemicals to be listed. So I believe it wasn't as extensive of a list of chemicals that would be listed as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Debbie's asking if CMTA could provide a breakdown like the first slide to show the specifics to the Inland Empire.
I don't have that data immediately handy, but I can actually work on that. Let me make note of that for you, Debbie.
Just like to see how we compare, within the state and possibly nationally, but Inland Empire has, a large proportion of manufacturers within our region. And it would be nice to see, what are our impacts? What are our declines, specifically, because that helps us, I think, with, our county and other folks to say, look, we're losing manufacturers, and what can we do as a community to retain them? How can we strengthen that retention side of things? I mean, maybe there's nothing that can be done, but at least it provides us some focus on how we can support those businesses that are have some pain points, if you will.
Are you talking about the graph that showed us like -2.2?
Yeah, the first chart gave a California.
Yeah, general state of
stats.
manufacturing.
Yeah, just some stats. I think it would be great to see that
Interesting.
driven down to the IE maybe.
Yeah, and we have some sectoral data for manufacturing. I know we have some regional data. I don't know how kind of specified regionally it will be, but I can put that together and work. And get
That would be great. Thank you.
And I will say one way, what like I know you guys are kind of limited to what you can do with legislation, but one way that we can, support that retention and growth is AB 904. I am pushing that one heavily. That's, like I said, really geared at incentivizing and growth and establishing that mechanism for the push forward for manufacturers. And like I said,
Were those
future? Excuse me?
Were those future bills, the 904?
Yeah, that's a bill that's active right now. We're waiting for it
Okay.
to be set. But yeah, like I said, we really tailored that one to small business, or small and medium-sized manufacturers. We worked really hard and did some research into what worked right and what went wrong with the old MIC, the old manufacturing investment credits, and really what we saw was utilization, who was using it, kind of where those funds were going, and we really want to make sure we can try to secure and encourage those funds to go into the right hands and really establish that growth and get to California.
Lawrence, on the same bill, the AB 904, I was trying to look it up a little bit to learn a little bit about it, but I wanted to listen as well, so I didn't really get there. But I wanted to ask you, I mean, is this really, do the credits depend on real innovation, or is that maybe a little bit of misnamed? Is it more about capital investment? Anybody can define innovation the way they want to, but I'm wondering if it's more a credit for capital investment, or do you actually have to do some innovation?
Well, I think that's actually an interesting way to look at it. I think the innovation for us really lies with you guys. I mean, it's a credit for manufacturers solely, and manufacturing in California, to us, innovate and produce, and that's something we want to kind of put the focus on. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that could be a little misleading, but we think you guys innovate and produce, and we want to put a focus.
Oh, okay. So it looks like it's up to the local governments to sort of buy in on this and help put this together. Is that correct? Like the county, the city, or will this actually be a state program?
We would definitely welcome county and city support, but we're trying to secure funds from the state with this one.
Okay, good. Yeah, I've just I think if that's mostly an investment credit, and I agree with you. I think manufacturers tend to be innovative. That's kind of in their DNA. But having a credit to be able to invest in automation and innovation, but any kind of capital investment, boy, that goes a long ways. You're right, to helping keep manufacturers here in California. So this could be a really terrific, depending on how much money it is and how you get it passed and so forth. But that's a good effort. Yeah, thank you.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I'll be happy to, I know if you continue to research, I'll be happy to shoot you any supplemental information, some sheets we have, and welcome your feedback. We're welcoming all feedback. We want to hear from folks like you about, what you guys think about this and how we can get it used. So yeah, I can definitely kind of feed some additional.
Do we just go online to look this up as far as the investment? I mean, it's an incentive program and it's offered to small businesses. How do we put in our application or whatever? It just barely passed, right?
Oh no, it's actually, we just introduced it. So we're
okay. So
yeah, we are hoping to get it
stand
passed.
online.
Yes, yeah. Oh yeah, we're hoping with some enthusiasm we can get to that step. We're hoping to get it passed.
So it probably wouldn't hurt if all of the people here, supported you in getting this thing passed, right?
Yes. Well,
now you're on to something, Rob.
Okay, there we go.
Now you're on to something. But yeah, we would definitely welcome you guys' support. Like I said, we really want to prioritize looking out for small.
That's a nice program.
Yeah, like I said, we'd love you guys' support with this going forward.
So Lawrence, I want to thank you so much for being here, and I hope you'll come back and see us again. We love these reports.
Yeah.
And for everybody else, just as a reminder, you can find out more as it gets updated, and especially with the makers and breakers at cmta.net. So thank you, Lawrence.
Thank
I
you.
know, I know it was kind of difficult last minute with the changes that we went through, but we really appreciate your being here.
Thank you.
So next, I would like to introduce Renee Pierce. She's the Senior Economic Development Analyst with the Employment Training Panel, ETP. And as you probably know, the ETP is a state agency that assists employers in strengthening their competitive edge by providing funds to offset the cost of job skills training. And Renee has spent over a decade with ETP working in their contract review and planning and research units. And she's currently Senior Economic Development Analyst and Workforce Specialist for ETP, providing outreach and project development assistance to employers and workforce partners. It's nice to know that Renee was a business owner before joining ETP, and that gives her some real world experience and perspective on the challenges that employers face in California. And I think we found out from our survey that workforce development is really high on the manufacturer's requested topics list. So Renee, we're really pleased to welcome you today.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm not going to go into the overall program of ETP right now because we are limited in time, but I did want to make a comment on Wally's earlier conversation about his experience with ETP. And one of the things that I want to clarify is that ETP funds, a contractor can use ETP funds to cover the costs of the training, the job skills training that they're doing for their employees. And that does include costs for hiring trainers and paying the trainers out of the ETP funds that you receive. So it's not meant to cover costs of employees' salaries. It's there to cover costs of the actual training, hard costs, you know, if you have to run a facility or buy course materials or hire a trainer. So that's what ETP does. We do have a priority industry list that we work off of. The panel this year has been impacted severely by COVID because we get our funding from the employment training tax, which is part of the UI contribution that you make for each of your employees through EDD. So as you can, imagine, companies that have either furloughed or laid off or completely closed, that has impacted the amount of funding that we have available. We take about $7 per trainee, per employee, and that's aggregated into our funds. So normally in a funding year, a fiscal year, we would have anywhere somewhere over $100 million to expend on contracts with employers. This fiscal year just coming up for an end on June 30th, we only had about 80 million. And of that, we carved out about 30 million to go towards specific COVID related training. So, and I would say that we're still waiting for the other shoe to drop on the budget. What will happen this coming fiscal year, starting July 1, we would anticipate that we would have someplace around the same amount of funding as we had this year, which would be about 80 million, could be less, we don't know. So the panel will be working as soon as we find out what our budget is on prioritizing what it is that we are going to fund, what types of contracts we will fund this year. But first and foremost is always going to be manufacturing in California, especially our small business manufacturers, companies with 100 or less employees in California and no more than 250 worldwide, who are facing out-of-state competition. And that we are part of that retention piece that the governor's office is working to keep companies here in California. We understand it's a really tough regulatory climate for you, and but we are a bright spot. And I would encourage you, if you're a small manufacturer, large manufacturer for that matter, to investigate ETP. I will also say that we work with our partners to help extend the training opportunities to manufacturers, to other businesses in California through our partners such as CMTC, CMTA, Riverside Community College District, MTech. I just saw it here on the screen, and then it disappeared again. But we are supporting the Cadence program and cybersecurity training through our community college partners. But specifically, and if you want to start the PowerPoint, I'm going to speak today about paid family leave small business grants. This is something that's new for ETP. We don't normally administer grant money, but because we have the mechanism to get checks out to employers, the EDD has designated us as the administrator of the enhanced paid family leave small business grants that are coming forward. This, you can go to the next slide if you'd like. What it is, it's beginning in July 1 of last year, the leave for paid family leave was extended from 6 to 8 weeks. And there's a current proposal to expand that to 12 weeks of non-paid protected leave for your businesses, regardless of size. It used to be if you were 50 employees or less that you didn't have to be regulated by this, but that's changed. So they do have information on the EDD website about paid family leave. If you're subject to it, you should know what it is telling you. Next slide, please. We have been designated to administer $1 million in state general fund dollars to support this grant. The principal impacts, of course, for a small business especially are that if you have an employee, if you have less than 10 employees in your workforce and you lose just even one, you're going to have to train and upskill an existing worker to cover the duties of that employee, or you're going to have to hire and train somebody. So this grant is meant to mitigate some of that cost. Next slide, please. So we awarded 2 grants. The grant administrator for the Northern California District is the Central Valley Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and they will distribute the payments to California small businesses on our behalf. Again, this is for employers with 10 or fewer employees who have at least one employee that's going out on paid family leave for any length of time. And that can be for a child, it can be for a family member who's gone into hospitalization right now for COVID. That's a big thing. And so any small business is eligible to receive up to $500 per employee utilizing PFL to help cover any of the costs of training, etc. The funds are going to be paid by the CVHCC, and the mechanism for that, if you want to go to the next slide, is that the business will register. They have to be registered in the state of California and be active status in the Secretary of State's office and have an active California employer account number with EDD under which their employees are listed on payroll. So, and this is a good point. If you are using a PEO for your business services, you would not qualify for this. So just something to keep in mind. But basically an employee who would go out on PFL would contact EDD, they would be given a registration number. That registration, of course, would be part of the employer's account information in the EDD system. The employer would then contact CVHCC, filling out a form requesting the grant money, and then CVHCC would send them a check, and we reimburse CVHCC, basically is how it goes. Next slide, please. So there is some data collection requirements that would go along with this. The name of the individuals, the sex, etc. And it's, again, the intended use is either to upskill existing or hire new employees. And the EDD, the things that you need to know are that you are going to have to provide an EDD CEAN, California, I'm sorry, the employee registration number with EDD to utilize this PFL. Next slide, please. That's it. So, so basically, you know, it's not a lot of money, but for a small business, $500 could be the difference between, you know, having assistance and hiring somebody or not. And we've tried to make it as simple as possible for small business employers. So it's a one-page form. And again, you just contact the CVHCC. You can contact me. I'll put my contact information into the chat, so you'll have that. But it's a really valid program for small business, especially manufacturers these days. You've got enough on your plate. Why not get a little bit of money back if you can? And again, I just want to emphasize that ETP has funds available, especially for manufacturers, to help you upskill and be more competitive in this really competitive market, not just nationwide, but worldwide. California is a competitive worldwide market. So if you have any questions about becoming a contractor with ETP, I would again encourage you to contact me or contact with one of our partners, CMTC, CMTA, the Riverside County Community College District. They can assist you. If you're a small employer and you don't want to have a contract with the state government yourself, they're there to assist you. And it's a great way to utilize the funds that the state is providing you. So again, I'll put my contact information in the chat. And I want to thank you for this time. And I'd love to be invited back to talk about ETP at more length sometime.
Thank you so much, Renee. Does anyone have any additional comments or questions?
All I can say, I really like the employee training program. For many years, we were recipients of funding, and it helped in many, many areas. So good program. Thank you, Renee, for being a part of a good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that testimony. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we've had maybe half a dozen contracts with ETP, and it's been a blessing. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's one thing about ETP is it's not a situation where you can only get one contract. You can come back in successive years and get more funding if you do need it to expand your business or provide additional training assistance to your employees.
Yeah, and you give help, you send people over, so it's not the process, you know, it's a fairly, I don't want to say easy process, but it's not a real difficult thing to do. And if anyone else has been recipients, by all means, you know, speak up. It's been a really, like I say, a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Judy Lopez is with Microdyne Plastics in Colton. Thank you so much, Renee. Glad you could join us, and a lot of good information. We have a few minutes left, and so I'd like to call upon Wally Brithany for a quick update about some interesting developments of interest to manufacture. Wally is the past president of Brithany Electric, and he's served on the MCIE executive board and been an enthusiastic mentor of the group for years. So Wally, are you
I'm
able to
ready.
go ahead. Okay.
Can you hear me? Thank you. Thank you, Molly. And Renee, thank you for trying to address some of the questions I raised before the meeting started. And Lawrence, thank you for your presentation. A quick comment to Lawrence on those bills. When you have a bill that funds, let's say, the innovation and investments, things like that, or you try to write legislation, always remember there oftentimes are unintended consequences. An example that occurred, for example, was the enterprise zone concept, which had been around for probably nearly 40 years, I don't know, and we participated. And finally, when it was finally knocked out by Jerry Brown when he was governor, but what you found as you dig into it, or I had to help try to dig into it, it was there are parts that help the businesses that were intended, the manufacturers or the businesses that for which the bill was written. But then you found the banking industry had a back office role in that legislation that ended up taking almost 50% of the money allocated to the program. And so, and the branches in the areas in which geographically located where the money was intended to try to help didn't even know about that money. It was strictly, so if your bank was one of your large banks, too large to fail, and the headquarters office is getting the money every year when they file their tax returns, the unintended consequences was there was only half the money going for the intention that the bill was written. So always be aware if you're involved with that kind of legislation. It's an interesting thing about legislation. The knife cuts both ways sometimes, and you end up sometimes doing good with one side and not with the other. What Molly mentioned that I'm no longer associated. We sold Brittany Electric a little more than 2 years ago to the Swiss firm called Sulzer. And in the non-compete and retention and agreements and all that we signed with in the contract language of selling my company, there was a little paragraph put in by our attorney, who was Sean Varner in Riverside, who put in a little part that I could do work for the school. So be aware, I can't do work in businesses similar to what I had, but I can do work with places like UC Riverside. I see Debbie Smith from Chaffey College, and I don't have any problems. I'm doing this, but it is exciting to not actually have a daily job to go to with this COVID. And it gives me time to work with places that I can try to help, let's put it that way. I try to help a situation. I've tried to work with, and am working with, the University of California, Riverside. I have my degrees all from UC Riverside. It'll be 50 years coming up in June since I got my doctorate in mathematics from UC Riverside. And so I have a fondness for the school. And and so working there, what we're trying to do, and what I'm trying to do, is find a way to make that part of our workforce, the part that deals with the degreed engineer or the degreed MBA person, find employment in the local Inland Empire with manufacturers and assist that role. That is to help UCR get more recognition by the local economy, as well as to familiarize businesses with what's going on in the school. UC Riverside, it has about $1 billion per year impact. I guess that's a number that they use. You could probably find lots of other numbers, but it has 22,000 undergraduate students, 3,500 graduate students, and a faculty of 850. So it's a pretty big, has a big footprint in the Inland Empire. So when you compare that with the steel mill or somewhere. Our local steel mill has somewhere near to 1,000 employees. A cement plant, which are pretty large manufacturing entities, might have 130 employees. So UCR is has a big footprint. And we're trying to make that more useful to the manufacturing sector. Today, I see on our participants, we have Dr. David Pearson, who comes, he's waved his hand there. You saw that. And I met with David a few days ago, and with Dr. Rosabel Ochoa, who's an associate vice chancellor for the Office of Technology Partnerships. UCR has need for us in a different way than just the workforce issue of hiring students, hiring interns, or hiring engineers or whatever. It desires to enlarge the role of doing research for our firms or doing research to help manufacturing. But it takes, in order to get to that stage, it's going to take some familiarization that we don't already have. A lot of people will say, I just had breakfast with a former Procter & Gamble executive, and he and his wife both, and she had been a congressional, ran for Congress in the state of California, US Congress a few years back. And they both said, well, what's UCR known for? And that's a problem we have, if you want to say. So I tried to answer it with the citrus industry, the avocados that we buy in the supermarkets. All of these have been touched by University of California, Riverside. In the desert, I live in Palm Springs. We have 128 golf courses. Turf grass is a big thing for golf courses. And so UCR has a turf grass segment that's through the cooperative extension helps that segment of the economy. What I'd like to see us do, and I think we're getting close to it, is developing something more like the cooperative extension program, but for manufacturing, so that people in our businesses, especially the smaller manufacturers, can develop a relationship with the university where they get comfortable with the university. We can stand here and say that UCR is primarily a research institution. Those words by themselves are a little bit intimidating for our manufacturers. They're intimidating for a lot of people. They just don't feel like that they could go to a professor and say, dial them up and say, hey, I've got a problem here on the coating of the windings that we do over at Sulzer here, or that the partial discharge inception voltage, we'd like to increase that on motor windings for use with electronics. Any of those things, trying to say, well, why don't you go talk to a professor about it, would be pretty intimidating, I think, for most people. We're not in that research mode, but we're going to try to bridge that. And so some of the ways are to develop some, I'm going to call them services. The university hasn't answered on this exactly how they're going to call it, how we're going to describe it, but I'm trying to find ways that you can say, answer the question, what's in it for me for dealing with the university? What's in it for me? And you're going to have some positive answers. And you're going to have answers like, oh, they're going to provide facility assessments for energy efficiency, or they can provide data analytics for what they call big data. Here you are, you're a manufacturer of food. I could use a name, a product brand name, but I'm trying to refrain from that. Some product that you stick a postcard in and you say, when you buy the product, send it back and you get your registration for your warranty. And here you are you're selling your product through distribution with let's call it a relative handful of accounts. But here, all of a sudden, you've got postcards coming in from all over the United States or maybe all over the world. How do you handle that data? So UCR's got a professor, Dr. Mariam Saloom, who is working on a grant to help with that, where we would take students from UCR to work with companies and give you some geographic information from your data, perhaps, I think of marketing examples come to my mind quite easily. Quality assurance would be another area that could be useful. So that's going to be a service for you folks, for the manufacturers. That's going to make you a client of the university. The students will receive the benefit of working with industry. If you'll can picture that, the classes will have credit. The energy efficiency, when I talk about industrial assessment center or productivity assessment center, these would be services where students would be involved, MBA students might be involved, faculty, and I can let David Pearson explain this here in a second, and they can go into your account and help you identify ways to increase productivity in your firm, whether it's through automation, robotics, energy efficiency conversions. And this would be, I'm going to say, at no charge for your companies. So there's lots of opportunities. We're trying to shape those programs, and we're targeting fall of 2021, when we believe that people will be able to more easily meet face to face. Because these projects that involve students, some of them can be done where the student never sees you or never goes to visit you, but some, like facility assessments, would obviously require some interaction that firms are now at this moment reluctant to let you into the gate if you to just do a student project, what look like student projects. I'll tell you our own Brittany Electric experience with the industrial assessment centers. We did our own, or we had our own done. This was with Cal State San Francisco, and it was we implemented about 4 out of 6 or 7 key suggestions that were very successful, and this is what we're trying to model off of to develop a program with UC, where UC Riverside engages in that kind of activity. So with that, I'd like to ask, could I give David the floor here? David, this is Dr. David Pearson, has a business background with Novartis as well as other firms. He snickered a little bit or laughed when I mentioned Sulzer, who bought us, which is a Swiss firm that's about 236 years old. And dealing with the Europeans is probably a little different, gives a little different kind of approach. But I'd like to ask David if you could. David wants to meet some of you, the manufacturers, and because they're already working with people like Roy Paulson. That's on some technical stuff. They really want to learn what your needs are, and I'd like David, if you could maybe step in, David, and so this is Dr. David Pearson from UC Riverside.
Well, he's really blown up my reputation with all that, but greetings, everybody. I'm glad I could join this afternoon and look forward to working with the manufacturers very closely. I've started a program of outreach at the university because I've been 2 years there now after 35 years in pharmaceuticals and biotechnology, much of it in Europe. But after joining the university about 2 years ago, it's become very obvious to me that there's a white tower image for the university, and the connectivity between the university and the community, as Wally has said, has just not been what it could be. So what I've been doing with the support of our technology partnerships team is I've started talking to manufacturing people. We did actually start down in the Temecula and Murrieta area with the first dozen or so interviews. But what I'm discovering is that there's a really great untapped opportunity in the sense that none of the first 10 I talked to had any relationship with the university, and most had no idea what kinds of services and capabilities were available. Everything from a piece of equipment that measures, motor vibration to electron microscopes and et cetera. So what we're doing right now is really a voyage of discovery and talking with technology officers and owners of small manufacturing businesses to see what your product development needs and challenges are, to see whether there's a fit with what we can provide from the university. And indeed, as Wally has said, we're trying to do that with an eye open to how we can provide interns and also qualified graduates to become employees at your firms. So I'm not here to say I know what the answers are, but if any of you would be game to talk with me for a half an hour about what your business challenges are, I'd like to tell you a little bit about, what kind of capabilities the university has, and we'll see if we can find a match. And by going through this process, we're going to learn a lot about how the university can serve the manufacturing community rather, a lot better. So I won't take more of your time now, but either drop a note to Wallace, or I've given in the chat my own contact information. And I've signed up to be a member of this group, and I hope that I can bring things of value as we get to know each other. So thank you.
Wally, thank you so much for bringing this forward to us. And David, I'd like to talk to you about possibly doing a longer program at one of our happy hours as you have things further lined up. And back in the days when we could meet in person, we used to have tours of plants.
Right.
And I'm hoping that that will happen again, and we'll be able to do a tour of the LA port and really get out there. And so I would envision that a tour of your facilities at the university might be an appropriate way to interest people.
Absolutely. And one of the places is the building behind me on the screen. I run an incubator where we have brought in 4 companies in the last 2 months who are starting to do research and development work there. And we have another incubator with 20 companies in it that does non-experimental type work, computer work, etc. So those are just the tip of the iceberg on resources that are available at very competitive pricing for the community.
Great, great. And if you didn't notice, everybody, David put his information in the chat bar, so you can pick that up there. And we've passed our 5 o'clock mark, but that's okay. It was interesting information, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Let us know if you have any questions, and we hope to see you next month, April 15th, for apprenticeships, filling specialty training needs, and building company loyalty. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your month.
Thank you.